we see it a lot our side, is the big difference between conveyancing and bridging. And I'll really hand over to you, probably your area, and obviously chip in where needed.
Yeah, thanks, James. I think from my perspective, I have to be careful with what I say, but I think you define
what a solicitor.
I think there's a clear, for me, a clear definition between what the specialisms between residential conveyancing and bridging finance. So if I try and break it down. So residential conveyancing is, a solicitor or a chartered legal executive who acts for people who are buying and selling properties. Whether or not that's buy-to-let investment, or that's whether or not they're moving as a fact, like moving their family home. Now that comes with different pressures. You've got the anxiety and the stress and the kind of questions that come up for first-time buyers, for example, people arguing over fittings and contents forms, people wanting to leave. I hear people talking in the office, people are arguing over a Kuka tap and saying, I don't want to proceed anymore because you've got to take that. And those are the nuances and things that you would deal with in conveyancing. And the time processes around conveyancing, as I'm sure we've all moved houses before, can be 5 to 6 weeks to 5 to 6 months, depending on the chain and, estate agents or the chain's falling apart, that kind of thing. I think, and in relation to conveyancing, the solicitors who deal with conveyancing generally are used to those specific timeframes and perhaps not used to the pressures that bridging finance brings. So I think as an education piece, perhaps a solicitor who does residential conveyancing shouldn't do bridging, and I'll come on to obviously explaining bridging, but I think most of us know what that is. But and conversely, you wouldn't use a bridging solicitor. You wouldn't. I used to do residential conveyancing, but you wouldn't now. Or if a client approached me and said, "Can you buy my house for you?" I'd say, "Yes, I could technically do that, but I'm not a specialist in that area anymore, and I wouldn't be best placed to do that." So I think it's an education piece for clients to say, if you've got a family solicitor that's worked for your family for years and years and years, should they be doing residential conveyancing? If that's what they've done in the past, yes. Should they be doing bridging finance? I'm not sure. If it would very much depend on whether or not they've got the experience, because at the end of the day, their duty is to act in the client's best interest. If they have never done bridging finance, ultimately it's their decision as to whether or not they want to act for the client. But I think the client, as the borrower, should be asking their solicitor, have they dealt with transactions in a very short time frame? Because no one likes having to chase someone repeatedly. And it's not fair on that person either, being chased repeatedly if their expectations are not, as a bridging solicitor, we've done transactions within 24 hours before, not 5 to 6 weeks. So it's just understanding, I think, and making sure clients are aware when they're appointing a legal representative, what they are getting themselves into, I suppose, as when it comes to using residential conveyancing solicitor or a solicitor who specialises in development finance, bridging finance. Does that make sense? I hope that does.